Good afternoon. It is April 23rd. I've tried to do this forecast and my computer is just not cooperating. As you can see, we have a big bold letters KP8. Guess what? It came in bigger than expected and about 7 hours earlier than expected. That's the bad news. So we are going to jump over here to a view of our sun. And there's a few things I want you to pay attention to. I want you to pay attention to when the CME flares. So when you see the big CME go off, where was it on the sun? And then I want you to look at the coronal hole and I want you to pay close attention to how it's growing. Okay? So I'm going to set here and we're going to mark this right there. So we are, pause this. What? Just a second. I'm going to go back and I want to pause this right here for a reason. You see how this is just past center stage when it flared off. This is important to note because every storm we've had for the last 3, 4, 5 months, it has got to this point just past Earth facing directly, and the sunspots come to life and get active. So somehow the interaction between the magnetic fields between Earth and sun are triggering something and they get really active after it passes Earth. After it's directly in alignment and the magnetic fields are connected, is a trigger, and then it will pop off the electrical activity and supercharge it. So knowing this happens, and I want you to look at the size of this flare too. This is really important to know why we got a KP8. Look at the massive density to this. As I toggle it back and forth, look at the massive density that takes off. That was a massive flare. That is why we have a KP8. There was a lot of ejecta, a lot of solar radiated particles that were magnetically charged that got thrown off the surface of the sun. Now, I'm going to rotate this around. Not anything really on the day or so here to say much about. We had a couple flares, a couple CMEs. Now I want you to look at how we go from, here's this really tiny roping, it goes from just a hole, a single ropey hole, and we're bringing this around. And look how this opens up and gets really dark and black. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and clearer in the centers. Where you see this margin is getting clearer and this is getting clearer and it's trailing along behind and getting bigger as at the back of it. This is the birth of a corona hole. Now this may last months or it could collapse in a cycle around the sun. I think it's going to at least last at least one cycle around the sun. This is a brand new baby corona hole. It is strong, it's deep, it's getting bigger. I'm going to bank this has really strong winds and really magnetically charged winds. So, what does that mean? I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. As you can see, we're at a KP8. For all you newbies, I want you to hear me and hear me well. You cannot look at feeds and apps and get the whole story. Feeds and apps are only measurements of what are happening in the moment. They can only see what's coming off the sun. They can only measure things that are coming off the sun with what limited tools they have, and they are limited. We're getting better with our tools, but we're not there yet. There's still so much more that we don't know, and we need to learn how to measure before we can get an accurate picture. But the best way you can learn how to know the auroras are going to be there is to learn the science and to learn the patterns. NOAA and NASA cannot give you and do not give you the long-term, month to month to 6 months to a year-long patterns that you will get by observing it every day. And you will get a feel to when it's going to be coming earlier than expected or coming later than expected. Okay? This is something you want to be prepared for. They don't happen on time. They are bigger and smaller than expected. These are guidelines. And about 50% of the time, they're wrong. And it's not the scientists' fault. They just are limited on what they can do, and they don't have the full story. Down here, we had a blink in our, and I want to call attention to this just for science purposes. We had a blink where our satellite feed dropped completely out. Guess what that was? That was our sudden 8 hitting our satellite out here, our ACE mag, and it knocked the feed out for a few minutes. So that is what you need to be monitoring. When you see one of those, it might be a good idea to go outside and check, because it may mean that we've gotten hit with something that they weren't expecting, and it's not just a satellite glitch. For those of you who are waiting for the all-important, where do I go and what do I do? Minnesota, Wisconsin. Minnesota, you want lower Minnesota is going to be your best bet. Maybe the east or the western side more than the eastern side. Mid to lower Wisconsin may end up the least cloudy throughout the night. It'll start out cloudier, but it's going to lose the clouds faster than whereas in northern Wisconsin, it's going to build in more clouds over the overnight hours. Michigan, Straits of Mackinac, upper eastern UP, maybe Alpena area, maybe the Thumb area. It's going to be broken clouds. You're really going to have to hunt and peck. If I was going to bank on this, I would say this is not the storm to chase. There's just going to be too many clouds, and we've got the weather pattern working against us because our air is colder than the water. It means the water is going to be evaporating into the air, and it's going to build those clouds up and make them denser and thicker. So I don't foresee that, and we're under a low pressure cell, so that just makes it a hot box for cloud development. We do have that coronal hole stream coming in the 26th, 27th, and 28th. On the 26th and 28th, we have a high pressure cell sitting over Michigan and Wisconsin. We should have a better chance at seeing auroras. Jumping back over here to the coronal hole stream, just watching how this is developing, I'm going to bank. Because this is a new baby thing, it's rapidly developing. I'm going to guess that there's maybe a little more energy to it than they think. Maybe there might be a little more wind speed than they think coming off this. And it might be a little more magnetically charged. So we're going to hope that this is going to err on the side of it comes in bigger than expected. If it does, and let me get it down here, pause it so I can get it up here. This will be Earth facing tomorrow. Okay, right behind it, we have the sunspot region, and it's reaching down into here and creating, there's a lot of energy going on right through here. By the time that this rotates through and the wind starts hitting us, which will be the 26th, 28th, this will have been Earth facing and possibly into that just past Earth facing where it'll pick up speed. And it pick up eruptive activity and energy, and it could possibly shoot off something if it follows the long-term pattern that I've been observing for the last 5 months. I've been observing when, especially on the southern hemisphere, when it gets past that Earth-facing spot, the sunspots rapidly develop and they tend to shoot out CMEs. They tend to be flaring until they get around the sun. I think that's going to happen. I'm going to bank that it probably will happen because it's happened consistently for months. So we could see one of those scoop shovel events coming in and scooping up some of that the last little bit of that coronal hole stream and shoving at us a little faster if it does. So I would bank on watching your 26th, 27th, possibly the 28th. We do have some storm systems moving in at the later part of the week that's going to make the 28th and 28th and the 30th harder to have viewing. So that's what I would bank on watching. I'm going to get this out here. Hopefully it recorded this time and didn't mess up. Next time we will talk a little bit more about it. I'm going to ask everybody to start thinking where you would like classes and to start putting it in the feeds of what areas, think big cities close to you that might have a place to have a large class.